Do you ever work to set goals, or do you ever feel like goals are just something that you have to check off and do in business because you're told you have to come up with goals? In this episode, we're going to dive deep on the reason why you need to set goals and how to keep the promises you make to yourself. So stay tuned on this episode of Word of Mouth.
Get ready to improve your mindset, increase your skill set, and expand your network. Follow along as the CEO of Master Networks brings you over a decade of business networking experience. Welcome to Word of Mouth with Chaz Wilson. So last week we were in Minnesota, and I was really just along for the ride for the most part, since we were doing a workshop with the lovely Sarah Bungie, who can really put on a workshop like no one else. But 2 of the days we were there, you did focus days or team days with a couple of your coaching clients. And it was really cool to watch you work through the goal setting and like organizational charts with them. I've never really seen that done before. And I know we have our annual one coming up here in a couple weeks. So it was just really cool to watch you take them through that path.
Well, first of all, I love how you're like, I was just along for the ride.
I was just along for the ride. I was sitting in the back, I was reading the book.
But more credit than that. But yeah, you know, it's a process to work through goals with people because unless we write them down, unless there's something that we're working towards, right? What we measure improves, what we track improves. But unless there's something written down that we're working towards, right? We're just sort of doing the same things every day. And it's good to take time to work on the business, not just in it. But you saw, and I'm curious from you, what was it about working through that process that was interesting from you? I mean, you were in the room and taking some notes at times too, but like what part of it was interesting to you as we worked through it?
This is actually going to sound kind of ridiculous, but it was interesting that a couple of times they had mentioned, both groups that you'd been with, that they'd had conversations prior but never reached a resolution. But having a third party or a separate person come in to have that conversation with them either added clarity or gave them validation to make the decision they already wanted to make. So I thought that was fascinating.
Right. That's why I do think it's important as you work. First of all, great observation. It's important when I work with these teams, I go in and I work with their leadership team, right? And we'll spend the whole day, like there was one, we were at a coffee shop, but they had a private room. We were in the private room. The other was
actually a cool location
really
too.
Cool. Yeah. And then the other one was a showroom of a appliance, like lighting store, but they had an upstairs conference room. That was huge.
Yeah, it was
cool.
Huge.
Almost too big for like
I know.
the setting.
It was only a couple people.
But we get together and we start to map out what they're working towards. So as a business owner, it's fine if you sit down and you work through your own goals, but the challenge is that there's no one there to sort of ask you the challenging questions.
Right.
Like, why is that the goal? And why did you put this? And how are you going to get there? And what if you did this? And why'd you put that down? And when you can work through those and ask questions, right? The power of the answers contingent upon the power of the question. And if you're asking yourself the question, how do you get to the right resolution?
And you don't get to be part of the conversation and reaching the resolution because you're the one leading that conversation.
Right. That's why with our own team, I bring somebody in to do it as well. Even though I know how to do it, I'm now a participant in the process than leading the conversation, right? And so, but to your point, people were saying like, oh my gosh, this was so powerful because we had talked about this as a group, but never decided on it. And there's lots of reasons that happens. That happens with us too. And so bringing that outside person to set your goals is a powerful thing. And up until recently, I've not been doing that in the past. I've always just sort of created them myself. But bringing an outside person pushes you, right?
I also almost wonder if having that outside person there facilitating the conversation gives them permission to have the difficult conversations that they maybe wouldn't bring up on their own.
And we saw that.
Yeah.
We saw where it was like, especially when we started talking about the goals and how that revolved around your organizational chart.
Right.
We saw that people were like, oh yeah, like what about this person or that person? And they started to have these conversations. But here's the other side of it. And so, yes, it's important as a rhythm of a business to maybe annually sit down and go, what's our annual goal? And I think the end of the year is a good time to do that, not wait till the first part of the year. But the problem too, that creates two things. So yes, I need to plan for next year. But the problem is that everyone sets these New Year's resolutions. And I'm always like, what about the end of year resolution? Like, what am I going to do between now and the end of the year?
Yeah.
Don't write it off. Don't be like, well, there's still 6 weeks and I'll hit it next year. You don't, because the habits you're creating right now is what will show up. In business, there's these cycles, right? You have like 90-day typically for most things, it's a 90-day cycle. So what I'm doing today will show up in my sales in 90 days.
Gotcha.
Right? So if I take time off now, which is what people do come holidays, Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's, like they take a lot of time off, and that's okay. But they have to understand that that time off will show up in February, March, right? And so they're busy in February or March typically, but the revenue isn't there. It's starting to show up because they took time off in November, December. So that's why I say, what's the end of year resolution?
I like that. So do you find that you have people build their annual goals around knowing they're going to take that time off, or do you build separate 90-day goals?
Both. So what I typically do is in the annual goal, I'll tell people, they'll write their numbers. They'll say, I want to, do $1 million, and then they divide it by 12. And the problem with that is it doesn't account for time off or missing, right? So you've heard me talk about where I say divided by 10.
Yes.
First of all, it's easier to divide by 10. That's 100,000 a month.
Story of my life.
Yeah, right. It's easier. I love easy math. Number two, it gives you those 2 months or time off during the year, summer, whatever, because we never account for that. I was wondering all these years, like I'd set a goal and I'd go, well, how come I keep missing it? Like I divided by 12. Yeah, but I didn't work for 12 consecutive months, or there were some months I didn't work that whole month. So those goals become not achievable. So yes, divide by 10. And then if you get to that, the end of October, and here we are, you go, oh, I already hit my goal. Well, you could take November, December off, but most people go, I'm going to go, and it's always been for me, November, December have always been high lead generating months. Maybe not high revenue months, but high lead generation months, because then I know that shows up January, February,
You're
March.
setting yourself up for success for your next annual goal. I gotcha.
And then you take that annual goal and you break it down to 90 days. So what do I need to do the next 90 days? That's why I'm saying, like, from now until the end of the year, it's still within that, less than 90 days, but we're still within this fourth quarter to like finish.
Gotcha. So it helps you move the needle in those 90 days for your annual goal, and then you're still not getting lost in that last 90 days of the year.
Yeah, and one of the things I always train people to do, and it doesn't matter whether it's business, it doesn't matter what goal you're setting, personal health, whatever, relationship goals. When I sometimes will take them and I'll break them down to 3x5 cards. So once I've built my 1-3-5, which is my big goal, sometimes I'll take them down to 3x5 cards and I carry those around with me and clip them to my wallet, kind of thing. Or on my 1-3-5, but just somewhere on these goals where you have them write this phrase, I promise to. Because the thing is that the difference between a goal and a promise is drastic.
How
you
so?
say, well, it's just words, right? Okay, well, if I said, I have a goal to pay you on next payday versus I promise to pay you next payday.
There's a more definite, gotcha.
I mean, think about it with anything. My kids are a great example of this. If I said, hey, I promise I'm going to take you to Disney World, you better be sure I better take them or I'm going to hear what? I mean, like, Dad, you promised.
Yeah.
Like, the word promise is important. So I ask people, when you're committed to that goal, to write at the top, I promise to. And now you have to follow through in every way that you promised to follow through on the things you've committed to doing versus just goal.
So you mentioned that you keep them on like a 3x5 note card. Do you find that there is power in physically writing it down instead of just keeping it in your head?
Yeah, I mean, because it's not a goal until it's written down. Like, otherwise, it's an idea, it's a goal, kind of there, kind of not committed to it, but until it's written down, becomes the physical manifestation of what's in my head that I want to achieve. Now it's a goal, it's written down, and now I write a promise. Now it's a promise. It's like step up from goal is now a promise. So if you back that out, promise, goal, idea.
It's almost like etching it in stone at that point, or ink on paper.
For sure, though. But it's written now, and now it lives.
Gotcha.
Until then, it's just an idea, right? It's just that sort of mental, spiritual creation. Now it's a physical creation. Now it's that second creation. I've now made it real.
Yeah, I've never thought about that before.
And right, and most people have goals, and in fact, many people. I was just, as you talked about, we were in Minnesota, and one of the other speakers mentioned something, and again, differing opinions is fine. I just differed with the opinion. And that was this idea that people go, well, I'm going to set a big goal and I'll work towards it. And even if I make progress, great. It's that whole idea of shoot for the moon. Even if you fall short, you land amongst the stars. It's never something I've bought into, because goals become habits, right? The actions that I take become habits. And so if I continue to create this goal of like, oh, I want to, make $1 million this month. Well, I didn't make $1 million, but I made 100,000. Okay,
that wasn't your goal.
No, and you're 900,000 off. So now what happens the next time you set a goal? You already believe mentally in that first creation.
Yeah, that you're not going to hit it.
You're not going to hit it.
Then you might as well set the goal lower. But then at that point, you've conditioned yourself to be striving for that higher goal.
Right. But you now are creating the habit that when I say I'm going to do something and I promise to and I make a commitment to it, I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
And you start to have faith and believe in yourself that you can do it, right? Versus just, well, it's an idea that I hope I hit.
Gotcha. So it's more than just goal setting. It's a mindset around the goals as well.
Well, yes. And that's like a lot of things, right? We can say something, but it doesn't have meaning behind it.
Yeah.
And that's why like goal setting is something that people take a lot like core values. They say, well, our company has to have core values, or our business or organization has to have core values, but we don't really believe in them. We don't live them. We don't teach them. We don't talk about them.
Then why have them?
Exactly. Same with goals. Why have them if I am not committed to them to the whole process? So if you're not going to commit to it and you're not going to follow through, then don't make them. Like, what's the point? It's just a waste. And you just continue to set yourself up that you don't ever meet them. And that's, I think, the mindset difference that I have. I've worked with teams and they'll go, well, I'll say, well, what's your goal this year? What's the one goal you're trying to hit? Well, do you want our real goal or do you want our stretch goal? I'm like, what's your goal?
Yeah.
Well, our real goal is $1 million. Our stretch goal is $10 million. I'm like, well, which one are you aiming for?
Right. I've never understood the purpose of stretch goals, actually, because that might as well have just been your goal.
Right. So let me break this down to another simple way to see it, right? In theory, I could say to the kids I coach football with, I coach the 6th grade football team. I could say, okay, on offense, our goal is a touchdown, of course. Well, you could say the stretch goal is to win the game. I get it.
Yeah.
But here's an interesting thing, and this is why our kids are doing so well. We're doing well on the defensive side of the ball, and we're doing well on the offensive side of the ball. We still have 2 games, and we have done 1,400 yards of offense, and we've only given up 280 yards against us. It's massive. But here's the thing. When I teach these kids, I teach them how to get a first down, which is 10 yards, right? I need them to get a first down. And the reason why is if they believe they can get a first down and they believe they can get another first down and another first down, then getting a touchdown's easy.
You could almost say the same thing for your 90-day goals then.
Correct.
If you succeed in the first 90-day, then you're already conditioning yourself to believe you can hit the annual goal. Right.
See, if you think about that, it takes care of everything else. If I teach these kids every play, we're going to try to get a first down. Every play. First down, that's the goal. First down, first down, first down. The other team can't stop you, and eventually you score. Right? And so that's like you're saying, if you just focus on that 90-day and you crush the 90-day and then you crush the next 90-day, here's what's more than likely going to happen. By the end of those 2 90-day cycles, you've probably already hit your goal or you're very close to your annual goal.
Shoot, and we all feel so much better once we've actually hit the goal. Even no matter how successful you are, if you land among the stars, you're never going to feel as good as you would if you actually hit the goal.
Well, I think it's Ed Milet that calls that blissful dissatisfaction. Like he's satisfied where he is.
I have heard that. Yep.
Right? But knowing there's still this gap. And I think that's what happens is we want to move from achievement to fulfillment, right? And again, with these kids, I could say, well, the achievement is you got a first down, but the fulfillment is they know they can do it. They know they can do it every time they want to. They know they can continue to score. Like it becomes fulfilling to them because we've mastered that piece to a pretty high level. So in business, it's the same. You want to create the habit of winning, the habit of trusting yourself. That's the other thing. And I think it was Jason Hewitt, who's been on my podcast before. He talks about, he just wrote a book called The Promise to the One, I think it's called, or The Promise you make to the one, something like that. And the premise of the book, without giving it away, is that the promises you make to yourself are some of the most important promises you'll ever make, because if you don't believe in what you're saying, how will anyone else?
Well, and I can see that spanning more than just business, but in your personal life, in your
100%.
relationships. Yeah.
I mean, it's all built around trust, right?
Yeah.
So that trust you have with yourself, that when you say you're going to do something, you'll follow through on it. And none of us are perfect. That's not the point. The point is just constant improvement. So,
Yeah.
Anyway, that's what I think people need to focus on. And that's what was fun with these teams.
Yeah.
You know, to take it back to that is to watch their, even just in a couple hours, their progress, right? You saw some of it, like light bulbs come on.
Yeah,
we need to
for
do
sure.
this. And even if they nailed those 2 or 3 objectives out of that in the next 90 days, they're going to be drastically further ahead than where they were when we started. All right. I think we got a question today. KT with the question.
What is the best or worst practical joke that you've ever played on someone or that was played on you?
You're going to have a better answer for this than I am.
I have an answer, but I'm really not sure I should say it on video.
I think that makes it better, and you have to say it on video.
Okay. Well, easily. So here's the good and the bad of it, right? It was a practical joke that ended up coming true, but when we were little kids, my dad woke us up early in the morning and told us we were going to Disney World, and then said April Fools. I know.
No.
But then took us to Disney World like a few weeks later.
Okay, so it wasn't that bad. Oh, no.
Well, at the time,
no, I
yeah.
can imagine.
Yeah. He was setting us up for weeks later.
Oh, gosh.
How about you?
I don't think I've ever, pulled a prank or a practical joke on somebody, and
Never?
I don't know. That's just not something I
Okay,
ever
that
did.
would
I
be
mean,
that would be a great podcast episode, though. We craft and concoct a prank, and then we video it and talk about it on the next
that
podcast.
would be funny. That would be
That
funny.
would be a good episode. I think everyone at home would love that one.
But yeah, then that could be my answer for this question then.
All right, stay tuned.